Welcome to We Are Not Here to Tick a Box with David Kane and Debbie Hayes. Episode 7, Belonging. So welcome along to episode number 7 of the We Are Not Here to Tick a Box podcast. And having reflected back on episode 6 and silo mentality, there was a word that kept cropping up out of Debbie's mouth, which was the word belonging. And of course, belonging, very short definition of that, an affinity for a place or a situation, really short and sharp one there. Belonging, how do we create belonging in whether it be in life with family, friends, but also of course in businesses and organizations, and that's what we're going to be discussing. So Debbie, belonging, why was this something that you kept coming back to?
Why was it something I go back to? Well, for me personally, I just think it's so important, and it's probably the complete reverse, isn't it, of silos.
Yeah.
So when we can give businesses, teams that sense of belonging, in my experience, people are far more likely to take ownership of things. They want to contribute. They feel aligned to what's being asked of them. It's just, when you belong to something, it's just got so much more power, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, if you feel like you've got a sense of belonging, you want to contribute, then people they've got the skin in the game, haven't they?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, when people start, I mean, when people start working for an organization, on day one, I mean, unless you made an absolute blunder in terms of who you've decided to work for, I think most people go to day one full of optimism, full of excitement, new job, here we go, let's get on with it. And of course, what you don't want is for that bubble to be burst very, very quickly. So belonging for me starts really early on. I'd actually go back all the way to recruitment, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Because, and I've heard these type of things creep in over the years that, an interview is a two-way process. I think a lot of the time, when I was younger, an interview was you were under the microscope, but I think now people are putting companies under the microscope. Do I actually want to work for you? These two stars need to be aligned. And of course, if a job is offered and a job is accepted, then you would hope there's a bit of commonality in terms of, what both parties stands for. And now it's about the delivery of that. And, so that's why I would say belonging for me starts very early in the piece, around their induction. Again, how many inductions take place where we will put you with our longest serving member of staff? All very interesting that longest serving colleague is actually the one that's most disenfranchised with us. He's had nothing but, or they've had nothing but, issues over the years. They're always the first to flag up they're not happy, right? So we've just put our new starter with perhaps the most experienced, but the person who actually will not create this sense of belonging.
So let me just go back a bit to what you said around the interviews.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely something that I've heard many businesses that I've worked with, definitely in more recent years, saying how much more scrutiny businesses are under, because people are being far more selective around where they want to work for. So perhaps whereas, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 years ago, people were there really for a sense of security, the job market has changed, I think, an awful lot. And so one of the key things that I've heard people asking a question of is around, will there be a sense of work-life balance? Where is the company's stance on people's well-being?
Yeah.
Now, that there's less tolerance, I think, of people working 60, 70 hours a week, because people are choosing lifestyle and their well-being over that financial security piece.
Yeah.
So businesses really do need to be aware of that factor, and that people are being more discerning in terms of where do they want to have that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
For sure. And yeah, so I just think that's really important, you know, and I think particularly now, because people right across the world have, you know, in various forms become isolated, then I think the actual human need for belonging has become highlighted even more.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
culture of a business has really got to play to that need, and that those companies that get that right are going to be the companies that really thrive.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't feel that sense of belonging, then what's going to happen? You're probably going to start to disengage, and people will look for that. And the amount of conversations that I've had, even just through walking the dog with neighbours, of people who don't feel like they've got a sense of belonging, they don't feel like they're actually cared for as an individual,
Yeah.
then they start to do what's necessary, but they don't go above and beyond. And they've got an eye outside of that business for where they might belong.
Yeah. And I think a lot of focus there's got to go on onto leadership and management, because, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of that for me stems from, do we look at a team or do we look at the individual within that team? Because as an individual, when you talk about well-being, I need to have a personal relationship. I need to be seen for me. I need you to understand that I'm not Susan, I'm not Charlie, I'm me. You know, I don't want you to compare. You know, because that's unfair on me. So actually, I think when managers invest at an individual level, that through the manager creates also a belonging to the brand, because that's what it's all about. It's all interconnected, and I think that's really, really important. I mean, you talk there about work-life balance, and you know, absolutely, you know, I think what businesses need to always, I mean, I always say this to people: a business will always owe you more time than you owe it, regardless of what job that you do. Regardless, there will always be times where you as an employee are expected to go above and beyond in terms of your time. The question I would have to leaders is, how do you repay that back with time? Because there are opportunities. I mean, we're coming up to Christmas, for example. Great examples here in terms of belonging. How many nativity plays are taking place in the next few weeks? Our businesses actually publicise, and this is something that I actually did. I actually publicised on email, you know, any colleague whose child is taking part in a nativity play, take this email as my personal commitment to you that you can attend that without using your holidays. Go to the school. I mean, you know, the likelihood is people work quite close to where they live. The school will probably be by. At worst, what the person's going to be out of the business for 2 hours, but actually what that generates is far greater than that cost of 2 hours. You
Oh,
know,
hugely. It's good. The
it's
goodwill
huge.
it creates is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely. So little things like that. And I actually saw, I'll tell you what I saw, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And you know that my background is automotive. You know, shout out to the Chorley Automotive Group. I was blown away this week. They put a post up telling their customers that they were going to be closed on a Sunday, because they were taking the decision that all colleagues were going to the colleague Christmas party, that they wanted them all to enjoy themselves, and they didn't want to put any colleague in a position where they couldn't have a drink, or potentially they could put themselves or the general public at risk by traveling to work the next morning. And you think, oh, I mean, yes, you may be losing one day's, well, I don't think you're losing the day sales. I think most customers are loyal. I would say 70-80% of the deals and transactions that automotive dealerships do is with current customers anyway. So you're not really losing a lot. But what that company is going to gain in terms of goodwill, belonging, pride in the brand, in the people, trust, you know, this, I'm not a number and I'm a person, and it just far outweighs that one day. And these are the type of things that like I say, giving back that time, work-life balance, you know, that absolutely puts your culture on steroids for me.
But also, talking about that scenario, there'll be some people that would actually engage with that company even more, Because from a customer's perspective, they would go, yeah, I really align to that. And so the sense of belonging doesn't just stay within the business itself, it's forming a belonging and relationship with your actual clients and customers. Because they go, yeah, actually, I feel aligned to that. I would want that company to support that. And I know that even just through LinkedIn, some of the posts where I've sort of commented about, you know, scenarios that I've seen in life where there is that real sort of more conscious commitment to people rather than just profits.
Yeah.
People feel very strongly about those things, so that there's great benefits to be had there for sure. And going back to your nativity play email, I was working with a client earlier this year whose budget was quite restricted in terms of what they were able to do in terms of investment in, say, like bonuses and that sort of thing. So my idea was, well, hang on a minute, what's really important to people? You know, it's not necessarily about a bonus, and if that's not possible. So, you know, I came up with this idea of, well, why don't you allocate people, say like 3 or 4 tickets a year, which are what's important to me days or slots, you know, so you could say, probably to go to like a nativity play, or somebody wants to take the dog to the vet, or somebody needs to go and visit a grandparent in a care home, say something like that, then, you know, it's probably not going to take all day. It probably would just take 2 or 3 hours. So what about you allocate everybody, you know, those sort of golden tickets for what's important to me days?
Yeah.
And what would that also create? A conversation around, can I take one of my what's important to me days? Then you'd understand that individual of like, right, what's important to you? And that again would create that sense of belonging, wouldn't it? Because you would feel valued as a person.
Yeah.
That individual then has an opportunity, if they want to, share about what's important to them. And when we know what's important to somebody, and we can sort of, you know, make sure we check in, well, how did that go? Did you enjoy the nativity play? You know, how was your grandmother, or whatever those things were? You know, it shows that we actually care, doesn't it? And the loyalty that would then build really helps with that sense of belonging. So we don't even always need to look for financial ways in which to create this as well. I think it is more about understanding the individuals and what really is important to them.
Well, one of the 5 ways to well-being is giving. And I think what I've seen a lot over the years is organisations include a day where a volunteering day. So every employee can have a day fully paid to go and volunteer, but then nobody takes them, because, you know, it's never really executed, which is such a shame. And you know, by doing that, by having a common cause and doing something good, it creates again that sense of belonging, that we work for a business that cares about its local community. It reinvests in its local community. And I think sometimes that's again where perhaps it goes a little bit wrong, in the fact that when you pick a national charity for those type of things, so for example, you know, my family's been impacted. My dad had a heart bypass, so you know, British Heart Foundation, absolutely, that's something my kids have had to go and use all the, hey, that's important to me. But you know, in a team dynamic, that's my world, it's not my team's world. Whereas, you know, sometimes it'd be good for a business to go, well, what's important in our local community? What can we do in our local community that everybody can really get on board with? What does that look like? Because it doesn't have to be that let's go and do the 3 Peaks challenge. It can be something a bit more centrally. And again, think of it from a community standpoint. That, you know, I feel proud because I work for a business that have done this for my local community, and my local community are now aware that we've done this. Are proud of me and are proud of my brand, and this thing just keeps going round. And by executing these type of belonging, you know, we could talk for hours, we always do, but by creating these belonging initiatives, you know, what I would say to all leaders, you know, wakey here, because the reason you lose good people is because they don't belong. By creating belonging, you retain good people, and here comes the absolute pinnacle piece. Good people surround themselves with good people. So if you want to bring the best people into your organization, by creating belonging, within your current core team, and for them to have this pride, this identity that they will tell to the world, actually they will become your best recruitment and selection team that you could ever have, because they will attract the good around them to your organization. Have a little think about that.
It does, because it oozes out of people, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And conversely, when somebody's pissed off at work, oh boy, then they talk about that even more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there, I mean, like I said, we could talk for hours. Believe it or not, that's 15 minutes. It's unbelievable, isn't it? It flies by. But we are, we are very, very strict with each other. We don't want these to be too long. We like to keep them nice and compact and punchy. I think we've given a good couple of anecdotes there, things for people to think of. Belonging. Have a think about that. Have a think about ways in which perhaps myself and Debbie can help you with that. But yeah, belonging. Is that actually something that you consider in your organisation today? And who knows where we're going to go to in episode 8, but we hope you join us this time next Monday to find out. Debbie, loved it. Fantastic. Thanks for talking about belonging and mentioning it 3 times last time. I fully enjoyed that chat. Join us next week for episode 8, Keeping It Real.